In this video, I will talk about the differences between iPytest and Doctest. Testing is an important part of our program. Even before we start writing the code, we need to come up with some test cases to be able to test our program at the end of it. For testing our example heat detection, we can test the following test cases. When the point hits the circle, when the point does not hit the circle, when we have an invalid input, when the point is on the border of the circle, when we have negative coordinates as input values, and when we have a circle, which is a point. The first option for testing our program, our heat detection function, is manual testing. You can just test your function with some input values and check whether the output is correct or not. For example, in this case, I check the heat detection with 3 different set of input values. And if I run this cell, you can see it says that for the first one, the point hits the circle. In the second one, we have an invalid input because the radius of the circle is a negative number. And for the last one, it says that the point does not hit the circle. In order to have a more efficient way of testing the function and check whether the output of the function is correct based on the provided inputs, we can use Doctests. Using Doctest, we can check the output of our function, providing input values all in once. For example, if I want to provide Doctests based on the test cases that I mentioned above, so we can just simply say that, okay, so if I call heat detection with these input values, then the output should be the point hits the circle. So when you want to use Doctests, the first line is always the call of the function with some inputs, with some input values. And the second line is the output, is the desired output, the expected output that we can have or we should have from that particular function. So if I run this cell, and if I run the next cell, which is helping me to run all the Doctests in once, you can see that all the test cases are okay because the expecting value, the expecting output is exactly the thing that we got from our function. For example, if I want to show you how would a Doctest show an error, and if I just add 1 space to the end of it, run this code and run this cell, then you can see that it says that we expected the point hits the circle, but we got the point hits the circle. You can say that, okay, so if I remove this space at the end and run it again and run this cell again, so it tells me that, okay, so the expecting output and the output that we got are both similar. So the output that you write here should be exactly the same thing as you expected in the output of your function. Okay. You also learn about PyTest and iPytest. So you already learned that iPytest is a wrapper for PyTest to allow you to use PyTest in Jupyter notebooks. You have already seen the find function during the week 2 lecture. In the find function, we give a string and we give 1 character, and the find function starts looking for that particular character in the string, in the given string, and return the index of that particular character. So when we want to use iPytest to to test these function, the find function, we can just import PyTest. We can import iPytest. We can clean all the previous test cases if we have any, and we can start configuring the iPytest. All these functions which you use to test your find function should be started with test. All these functions should start with test. And then you start testing your function, and if the test fails, then it shows this line of string. So for example, for this case, if I run this cell, and if I run the next cell, then it says that all 5 test cases are passed. Okay, that's good. But let's try iPytest to test our heat detection function. I exactly did the same thing. I import a PyTest, iPytest, I clean all the previous test cases, and I also config the iPytest. Okay. But if I run this cell, what will be happening? It will throw an error. It will throw an assertion error. But why is that? Why we cannot use iPytest to test heat detection? iPytest is designed to test those functions which they return something. So in this case, when you want to test the find function, okay, so you can use iPytest because it returns an integer at the end of the day. But heat detection does not return anything. So you cannot really check the outputs of heat detection function using an iPytest, but you can check with Doctest. So I can conclude that iPytest can only be used to test those functions which they return something. But if your function does not return anything, Doctest is the best thing to test it. Thank you.